some of your recent studies, you've been working on something that's been really helpful for youth workers. It's in the form of a book now that you've been promoting here recently. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that journey leading up to the book and a little bit about the concept behind it?
Yeah, well, we call it Sticky Faith, and it really emerged from a youth leader, just like you all, who looked at what happened with her graduating seniors and realized how many of them were drifting from the faith. And she was a Fuller student, so she partnered with us to do an initial study of about 60 youth group graduates from her church in Washington State. And from that, we got more and more interested in what happens to our youth group graduates after they graduate. Really good research indicates that almost half of them drift from God and from the church. So we received a grant that allowed us to study 500 youth group graduates from all over the country to try to figure out what you and I could do as leaders and even as parents to build in young people a faith that lasts, or what we call sticky faith.
And that book that's written now that people can purchase through the YS store is basically a culmination of all the research, right? And it's also some best practices and some ideas on how each church can implement these things that can help them incorporate in a multi-generational church. Is that right?
Absolutely. That's a big theme of our research, is how do we bring the generations together? In fact, one of the more interesting findings is we looked at 13 different youth group participation variables, 13 things that kids do in the context of youth group.
Yeah.
And intergenerational worship and relationships was actually one of the most highly correlated with mature faith.
That's great. And since the book has been out now for a while, I'm sure that you're hearing back some stories of churches who are implementing this and saying, hey, here's some we're trying at our church. Here's lessons we're learning. And I'm sure as you're presenting it, maybe even here this weekend, you might have run across some such stories. Why don't you share with us what you're hearing back?
Totally. Well, actually, Dustin Perkins right there holding little Luke. Hi,
hey,
Dustin. Dustin had a chance to tell me some of what his church has done, even recently, to build intergenerational relationships. So they have a church, their former church actually was a bunch of high school students and then a bunch of senior adults. And the senior adults were great people, but they were intimidated by high school students.
Right, yes.
And so what Dustin wisely did is created this manhunt, scavenger hunt, where senior adults were in a shopping mall and high school students had to find them. We've probably all done those kind of people scavenger hunts. But that was the start of relationships that were formed.
Yeah.
And Dustin was really wise because he didn't just pick any senior adults. He picked senior adults that were particularly influential in the church and even board members. And so from that, Dustin got more exposure for the youth ministry, built stronger relationships with board members and senior adults, and relationships were created that build sticky faith. So
you have to be intentional. You have to be thinking about what it is that's going to be connecting these two generations together. Yeah. What are some of the other ideas or stories that you've heard back? Or what are some of the examples of what sticky faith looks like in the local church?
Well, let me tell you even about Justin, another youth leader who I met this weekend, who he said he was sitting in our Sticky Faith seminar where we talk about how important it is to keep in touch with high school seniors after they graduate. Okay. So it's November. He has a bunch of students who are in college. And he looked at me and he said, you know, even high school seniors who were really involved in our youth ministry, I haven't kept in touch with them. So he left my Sticky Faith seminar yesterday, went out into the hallway, and called 2 of his youth group graduates yesterday afternoon. Great. Yeah. And he just apologized and said, I'm so sorry. I should have kept in better touch. How are you doing? Well, he said he then walked back into the seminar after having these great conversations with both of them. And by the time he was sitting down in the seminar, one of those students had already tweeted, just had the best phone conversation of my life.
Wow.
Here, just something that took Justin 5 minutes, motivated by Sticky Faith, led an 18-year-old to say this was the best phone conversation I've ever had in my life. So that's what we love and inspires us so much, is amazing leaders like Dustin and Justin, and leaders whose name don't rhyme with Ustin, by the way. Yeah. But that's their 2 particular names, who are doing things that we never would have dreamed of but are so meaningful.
So what you are up to, kind of the trajectory that you're on right now and equipping the youth worker is so important. And it's helpful for the youth worker to be thinking about these things that maybe we haven't been thinking about too well. We haven't been too intentional about it in the past. Yeah. Last question for you. Yeah. We've been asking it to a lot of our presenters. Is we had someone submit a question earlier this weekend that said this is, they are 5 days into youth ministry. They've been a youth worker for 5 days. Awesome. Which I would add, it's so cool that they're here. Yes. At a convention like this.
Perfect timing.
But beyond coming and getting training, what's the one thing a brand new youth worker must know as they're getting involved with helping teens for the very first time? What's a word of encouragement you might pass along?
Gosh, so many things come to my mind, Seth, but I think what comes to my mind more than anything else is just how important it is for us to be connected with Jesus. And this is sure a challenge for me with the busyness of life and family and all my responsibilities, but I'm constantly reminded of my favorite verse in Scripture, John 15.
Yeah.
He is the vine, we are the branches. We only bear fruit when we abide in him. That's the only way. And so it's something I continue to learn about every day is how to abide and bear fruit.